Welcome back to the Law Talks with Toks series, LTWT. I'm your host, Toks Hussain. Let me start by wishing you all a very happy International Women's Day. To mark this important event, we've got a great episode for you. Our guest is Marie-Hélène Proulx. Marie-Hélène is a lawyer admitted to the Quebec Bar since 2003. She is the current president of the International Criminal Court Bar Association, the ICCBA, an associate counsel in the defense team of Mr. Ngaïssona before the International Criminal Court, and she's previously worked at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon, the IRMCT, the International Residual Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals, and in terms of her educational background, she obtained a law degree from the Université de Montréal in Canada, as well as an LLM from the University Center for International Humanitarian Law, which is now called the Geneva Academy. In this episode, we talked about her career, in particular the transition into the field of international criminal law. We talk a great deal about the ICCBA and, of course, wider issues that pertain to the field of international criminal justice. Thanks for your time and enjoy the episode. Hello, Marie-Hélène. It is a pleasure to have you on Law Talks with Toks, LTWT. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Toks. Thanks for having me.
So I'm very excited that you're here, particularly when we consider your background. Your profile is incredibly impressive. But I think what many people are interested in is knowing how you got into the field of international criminal justice. Do you care to share your story with us, please?
Sure, my pleasure. My journey started just over 20 years ago now, so it's quite different from what people are living now, trying to get into this field. 20 years ago, I think I came in as an intern. Nowadays, I would not even, be shortlisted for the position because people are just so much more qualified now. But I did my internship, my very first internship in the office of the president of the ICTY. So I was involved in administrative work of the president's office, but also in the work of the appeals chamber. And eventually, I went back to the ICTY 2 years after my internship. Actually, no, a few more than 2 years. But in 2007, I came back into the appeals chamber as a fellow, which led me eventually to do a little bit of a stint in the registry. And then by 2010, I had joined the ICC chambers. That was my first experience at the ICC at the time. But, contracts being what they are there, I was in a slightly precarious situation. So that led me to switch again to go to the ICT, back to the ICTY, but to the OTP this time in the appeals division. And eventually in 2016, I finally arrived in defense, which is pretty much my home at this stage. So I started in defense at the STL, and then eventually at the ICC with a few teams, and I'm presently co-counsel in the Ngaïssona defense team at the ICC.
That's absolutely fantastic, and it's incredible to know that you've had a taste of almost every part of, the internal structure, be it in OTP or in defense, etc. I think on a personal level, I'm interested in knowing what the transition was like from chambers to eventually defense, given that I work in chambers at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I learned a lot from my experience in chambers, both at the appeals chamber and in a trial chamber at the ICC later on. It was a very interesting, formative experience. But for me, I felt after a few years, I felt that the hierarchy was very strong in chambers, which is normal because you've got, the judges who are ultimately the authority, and everything, falls from them.
Sure.
And I after some years, I felt like I wanted to have my own voice, and maybe that chambers was not the best place for me to do that. And which is why I moved on, and I first joined the prosecution, where I had the opportunity of appearing before the court. But then in defense, the situation is very different in defense. The hierarchy is not as strong or not as formal. And the reason for that is that our teams are so small and we are so understaffed and under-resourced. Everybody's input really, really matters. You can start as an intern in defense and your contribution will be absolutely essential to the work of the team. And it's the same for everybody in the team, case managers, legal assistants, counsel. Everyone's voice is heard and can make a difference in the way that we present our case.
Thank you. And you've hinted at some of the issues which we're going to talk about. Something interesting happened to you last year, right? Which is that you were elected as the president of the International Criminal Court Bar Association, the ICCBA. And according to the website, at least, the ICCBA serves as a collective voice for the independent counsel and support staff who represent the victims, defendants, and the actors, such as witnesses before the ICC. So firstly, let me say congratulations. And secondly, for those who are unfamiliar with the ICCBA, could you shed a bit more light as to what it is that it does?
Sure. The ICCBA was created in 2016 because there was a need for external lawyers, so defense and victims counsel, to unite and be heard with one voice. So they created the ICCBA with that desire in mind. But it goes further than just representing the lawyers that actually appear in front of the ICC. It also builds a community, a legal community across the world that are interested in the work of the ICC and that want to contribute one way or another. So it's I'm very proud of this organization. Really, it's very vibrant and it's very diverse, and it's a really important way for lawyers to advocate in our own favor because nobody else will do it. And lawyers like to advocate.
Yeah.
And so when we don't have to defend our clients, we have to defend ourselves. And the organization is very crucial in that sense.
Thank you. That's incredibly helpful. So speaking about community, from the 5th to 10th of December 2022, the state parties to the Rome Statute of the ICC, they convened as usual in The Hague. And this time around, it was for the 21st annual session of the Assembly of State Parties, the ASP. And of course, those who are unfamiliar with the ASP, they meet in full plenary yearly to discuss important issues which relates to the functioning and the governance of the ICC. Now, I think that event was incredibly important for both of us for two reasons. Given that, firstly, for me, it was the first time I attended the ASP, and for you, that was really, I think, the start of your presidency. And there were a few things going on in the background, of course. At the same time, there was ongoing protest from defense counsel at the ICC, which we'll deal with in a minute. And of course, there were reports about defense groups not being permitted to enter the World Forum, which is where it took place. So I just wonder, what are your reflections as to the start of your presidency amidst all of this going on?
Yes, thank you for this question. It's good to think back now that a little bit of time has passed. It was really for me baptism by fire. I had been elected less than a week before the ASP, which is really unfortunate because anybody in my position would want to prepare for an ASP, and there was really no time, and we had to go in. I say we, it's me. I'm executive director of the ICCBA, and some of the members of the executive council who were there also supporting my work there. But we had to go there knowing the context of the strike. And I don't want to preempt because you say you're going to speak about it. But the strike of the support staff was also very important for me because my own team, the team that I am a part of, was striking, was outside of the ICC and outside of the World Forum. My case was being, affected dramatically by this. And I had to put my counsel hat aside and put my new ICCBA president hat and go out there to, into the World Forum, trying to find the people who could maybe make a difference for us immediately. And that was very difficult because when you get to the ASB, the budget for the following year is pretty much locked. It's very difficult to get anything.
Yeah.
And so, and I didn't, I come in there and I'm not a diplomat. I don't know how diplomats work. And I didn't know any of them. So I had to try and, look at the cards with the names of the countries. Okay, these are the people from France. These are people from Germany. I need to speak to all of them, and targeting who I could speak to. It was madness. It was one of the craziest week of my life.
Yeah.
It was at the same time really exhilarating because at the end of the day, we managed to make a difference. We proposed. We wrote an amendment to the omnibus resolution, and we sold it to the states. And it's funny because at the beginning, it was very difficult. Mm-hmm. And then somehow the day that we proposed it to some of the states, we heard back that it had been modified. We didn't know by whom. We didn't know where it was and what the latest wording was, but it was picked up by the countries negotiating between themselves, and eventually it was proposed jointly by 5 countries and supported very widely by the rest of them. And it was a beautiful moment, really. It was just interim measures for us, for the benefits of external teams. But in these circumstances, it was like we moved a mountain. So.
Yeah, and you got a crash course in diplomacy.
yes, absolutely. Very much so.
I recall that you gave a speech and you addressed, several issues affecting external teams, in particular the defense. And you asserted there was a need to reform, to use your words, the chronic legal aid policy, as this undermined the equality of fair trial rights. And the defense team, certainly, they've argued that the salaries have been frozen since 2013, whilst the prosecutor counterparts, the OTP, they've had salary increases. And also currently it's said that the external teams earn 30% less than their OTP counterparts. So if these numbers are in fact correct, can you just help us understand what impact this has practically on the work that you do?
Yeah. Yes, it has tremendous impact. As you said, the salaries or the fees that we receive for our work, they have been frozen since 2013. The inflation since 2013 has been tremendous. And everybody noticed in the last year how bad it has been, especially in the Netherlands, where the cost of living is already very high. But, last year is something. Now we're carrying the increase in cost of living of the last 10 years. And we've had no adjustment at all, considering, as you said, everybody else in the court has adjustment on a yearly basis if there's needed, if there's an increase of costs and inflation. So they get that. And it's fantastic. I don't say that they shouldn't have it. I'm just saying, well, considering the situation, the cost of finding an apartment in The Hague, I mean, it's extremely expensive. Mm-hmm. And we have young lawyers who come in as for example, a case manager. The salary for case manager in the legal aid policy is something like $3,900. That's the maximum salary that they can get. It's already difficult to get an apartment in The Hague for less than $1,000 or more. And we're not talking luxury apartments. We're talking basics. Yeah. And then, everything else that they have to get to just to have a normal basic standard of living. They're not, having luxury items delivered all the time. They're living really basic. And they're struggling. They are struggling. And I'm giving you now the example of someone who gets the maximum salary. But the reality is, in a lot of these teams, people do not get the maximum salary that is offered by the legal aid policy, because the legal aid policy is not very generous. And so counsel might decide to split a position into 2 or maybe even 3 people because they need the manpower, they need the resources, the human resources.
Sure.
So they'll give less money to people to make sure that they have enough people to do the work. And that's a flexibility that the legal aid policy allows them. So they take it, but the consequences are that some legal assistants and case managers and junior staff in legal teams struggle to make ends meet, and it's tragic. It shouldn't be the case. We should all be paid to an extent that allows us to live and to not constantly worry about our livelihoods. And that's just one of the problems. I'm just talking about salaries now, but the legal aid policy is full of gaping holes in terms of protection of legal staff.
This is Law Talks with Toks with your host, Toks Hussain. Perhaps we can take a step back for those who are unfamiliar with legal aid to begin with and the legal aid policy. Could you shed some light? What does that actually mean, this legal aid we're talking about?
Yes, well, the legal aid policy is the way that most of us, if not all of us, in external teams are remunerated. Our clients, be it the victims or the defendants, most of them are indigent. And therefore, from the moment that there's a statement that they are indigent, they are allowed to receive legal aid to get legal services by counsel and a team. So we're all remunerated through this policy, which is managed by the registry, but more specifically by the counsel support section of the registry. And this legal aid policy determines what a regular defense team looks like. 1 counsel, 1 associate counsel, 1 or 2 legal assistants, 1 or 2 case managers, basically. And then there's a separate investigation budget that allows us to hire investigator or resource persons, for example.
Okay.
But the legal aid policy determines a maximum salary or fee that anybody in the defense team can get, but does not determine a minimum wage.
I see. So you are advocating for a more generous legal aid policy in essence.
It has to. I mean, it has to, because people cannot be expected to work the amount of hours that we're working in defense and in victims teams, and not be able to pay for basic needs. I mean, it's unreasonable. And I'm talking, on behalf of all of us. We all love our jobs. We all care very much to do that work. But there's also a limit to what people can accept in terms of conditions of work. And I think we've long passed that limit, which led, the support staff to strike, unfortunately.
I completely understand the position, coming from England myself. Very recently, the barristers in the UK had a strike over legal aid as well. So it seems to be a matter deserving of attention globally. I would submit, not just in the ICC, but certainly it's very important for counsel and everybody else to be able to live, to be able to dispense justice accordingly. Now, I want us to perhaps consider some broader issues in relation to the work of international criminal justice. And the first thing I'm thinking about really is the issue of diversity. And at this ASP pass, the president and the prosecutor launched the court-wide gender equality and workplace court strategy. And broadly, as you know, there is a perception that ICL is not a very diverse field, and the actors certainly could be more diverse. And so I want to know what your view is. Do you agree with this this idea? And if you do, perhaps could you tell us what you'd like to see?
Absolutely, I agree. The ICC itself, when they hire, are bound to a certain standards to diversity. So when someone is hired by the organization, these factors are taken into consideration. And frankly, I don't know much about it, so I'd rather not weigh in on the ICC institutionally. Now, in defense and in victims team, it's different. Again, we're going back to the legal aid policy. It all goes to that. But the legal aid policy does not foresee, for example, any notice, any mandatory notice before dismissal, for example, which means that anybody on a defense team can be fired for any reason or no reason at all immediately. Wow. And in this case, if it's a non-EU resident, this person has to leave the country within a matter of days. So, people are saying the defense is not diverse. The diverse is very white in defense.
Yes.
And it's true. But there are real reasons for this. And I'm speaking about my team. We used to have someone who from a non-EU country in my team. And this person decided to leave because they felt they were very precarious here, because you never know what's going to happen. And so they went back to their home country because they felt that, they could build a life there that they could not do here. Yeah. And I can't blame them for that. And it's the case with, a number of people in defense teams right now. Not everybody's from the EU, but those who are not are taking serious risks for their own lives, So I think the legal aid policy definitely needs to provide for some more protection that would allow us to hire from more diverse backgrounds. Now, this is not the only reason. We're also, people in defense don't have a contract, for example, people in victims either. We're not hired with a contract. So when we do recruitment, most of the time it's very urgent. And we have only limited means of advertising for a vacancy in teams. You'll find defense or victims vacancies on LinkedIn or on Twitter or maybe on Facebook. This is basically how we recruit. And then there's word of mouth. We'll hire the interns that we had before. And interns, of course, that's a whole other problem. The fact that internships are unpaid and that only, again, privileged people or people from privileged backgrounds can afford to do an internship. So it's a bit of a vicious circle. I'm not sure how to break it, to be frank. I think there needs to be more investment. But again, it comes back to money. We need to pay money or protection. Something has to give that will allow us to not only hire people from more diverse backgrounds, but also offer them conditions of living, conditions of work that are satisfactory, that are not exploitative.
No, I think you've made an excellent point, which is money. When we talk about justice, many times there's a key question of money. In fact, I remember the first time I did a moot in university, and we were arguing the point, making excellent legal points, and I remember the judge said, "Okay, that's all nice and good, but let's talk about the real issue. That's money." And I didn't prepare the point about money. I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's the real issue."
Yeah, nobody wants to hear it, but fair trial and equality of arms have a price. They have a price. Diversity does too. And unless we address this, we're not going to solve any problem.
Of course. And which makes me to make the comment that, of course, funding of internships as well is a good way, of course, to also improve diversity within the field more broadly. But I want to know, as president of ICCBA, do you have any plans or initiatives in place to certainly improve diversity amongst your own members?
Yeah. Well, to be frank, the members are already pretty diverse. Now, is there a majority of Western lawyers? Yes. But we have a good membership basis in South America, in Africa, and in Asia. And I'm trying to widen that for sure. There's a lot of lawyers who I think don't know about us or don't know what we can offer. And we're trying now slowly to outreach a little bit more, maybe by organizing events in other countries, publicizing what we can do for them as lawyers before the ICC. The issue is that we cannot, as the ICCBA, promise them employment at the ICC. This is something over which we have no power. And a lot of the time, I think this is what people would want, right? They they would hope that getting into the ICCBA would give them a better chances. I'm not sure that this is the case, but at least it puts them in touch with people who maybe have the knowledge or have the connections that can be useful to eventually be hired at the ICC, either in any capacity. You can be a Rule 74 counsel, you can be an Article 55 suspect counsel. You don't have to necessarily front a defense team or front a legal representatives team to be involved in the ICC. But yeah, no, we've just this week launched a new flyer to try to encourage membership.
Okay.
We'll see if it makes a difference. We obtained from the registry that any new counsel admitted on the list will receive that flyer, so they will be informed coming into the list of counsel that we exist and that they are welcome to join. I hope it makes a difference. I know that the ICC has launched a campaign to try and encourage counsel from South America, from Latin America to join. We'll have to translate our flyer into Spanish, clearly, but I sure hope that we can increase diversity in membership, and but we'll see what happens. And also, I can't reveal too much, but we are in process of considering appointing focal points in terms of promoting diversity within the ICCBA. So in a couple of months, I'm sure we will be able to launch this publicly.
Excellent. And I look forward to learning more about that initiative and other initiatives that you do have. And I applaud the efforts that you are making. So as we start to conclude, let's think about the core document, which of course is the Rome Statute, and 17th of July 2023 will mark the 25th anniversary of the adoption of the Rome Statute. And of course, that's the founding treaty that established the ICC. At the moment, there are 123 countries that are state parties, and I believe recently Armenia signaled its interest in ratifying the treaty. So my question for you, Marie-Hélène, is, do you think that we will ever achieve total universality of the Rome Statute?
No, I don't think so. Let's be realistic. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It would be wonderful, but it's completely, no, it's not going to happen. But it's okay, as long, I think it's this justice ideal is an ideal. It's not necessarily going to materialize fully. But as with everything, I think incremental changes are better than no change at all. And I think this is what we need to do. We try to make incremental changes, a little bit, one state at a time, one situation at a time. We have to be patient, but I don't see a problem with us continuing to work in that direction, even slowly.
Cool. Okay. Well, I suppose that whilst on the one hand, it'll be nice for more countries, certainly the notable absentees, to join the Rome Statute. But I think on the other hand, maybe the ideal really is that the ICC isn't eventually needed, in the sense that A, countries have capacity to try these crimes, as the ICC is the court of last resort, and B, because people just won't commit these crimes after all. So
yes, well, that would certainly be wonderful. I again, we all know, it's not. I don't think it's in the near future, just to put it mildly, if ever. But yes, no, I agree with you. It would, complementarity is one of the greatest principles, and I wish that we would see a bit more of implementation of that in different countries around the world. That would be definitely a step in the right direction. Also fair trials. Fair trials is the goal, I think, of all of it. And that should be the benchmark for success, rather than conviction or acquittal. Having fair trials across the board is really what we should be aiming for.
Thank you. So for those who haven't joined the ICCBA, What would you say to convince such people to join the ICCBA?
Well, I guess there's a bit of there's something for everybody. We have three types of membership. One for list counsel, so people who admitted on the list of counsel at the ICC.
Yeah.
That's full membership. Then we have associate membership for people working in the teams, so support staff, legal assistants, case managers. And we have a third type of membership, affiliate members, for people generally interested in international criminal law.
Yeah.
And I would think that whatever category you belong to, there is something for you at the ICCBA, either by direct advocacy for your rights and for the common goods of lawyers and assistants working in front of the court, or for training. We organize a lot of trainings, events, just for sharing of information about the developments before the court. I think it can be quite a positive thing to do if you're interested in this field and you want to know more and want to stay connected to people who are actively involved with cases before the court.
Thank you so much. So it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Marie-Hélène Proulx. Remember to check out the work at the ICCBA, and just to recall that Marie-Hélène Proulx is, of course, the current president of the ICCBA and an associate counsel in the defense team of Ngaïssona here at the International Criminal Court. So thank you so much again. And
Thanks to you.
Wish you a very successful tenure as ICCBA president.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Law Talks with Toks. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to my channel, Toks Hussain, share, and leave a comment. Ciao.